Oh, it's you just get on
Yeah,
and
you
it's
just
right
down,
there.
yeah,
I
just
gotta remember
down.
my password, that's all.
Yeah.
That might be the.
You need to get on that Prime. There's actually some pretty good stuff on it.
Anyway,
No, like shows and stuff. Like
I don't have much time for that, but I do watch football. Who else is coming? Wonder if anyone let Nicole know that my other stuff's out, they would have pulled it. Did anyone let you know they're not coming? Anyone let?
Was that map in our packet?
What?
Was that map in our
No,
packet?
that's the comprehensive plan for the parks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't see that one. I know I skimmed over it, but I did not see that.
Good? You guys ready? All right, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order on September 13th, 2020 at 6:30. 2022. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
here.
Commissioner Nelson, Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger, Mayor Tarkington,
Here.
Commissioner Snooks,
Here.
Chairperson Nyberg.
Here.
5 present, 2 absent.
Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next on the agenda, general public input limited to 10 minutes, but if the item is on the agenda, you can just wait until the public hearing for that one. So if there's any other items, go ahead and stand up to the podium, please.
You want me to use the mic?
Yes, please. And state your name and address.
My name is Cliff Kapp. I live at 1350 Kremer Drive. I'm presently the president of the Sunrise Estates HOA. However, I'm not here in that capacity. I'm wearing a Rockies jacket only because I don't own an Avalanche jacket. What I am asking about is trash collection. I can maybe expect a simple answer. If it's a case of labor shortage, then I understand. But where our normal trash collection's Thursday, the website said it would come Friday, and most people put it out sometime Thursday, and then it didn't come Friday, and it come later on Saturday. It came later on Saturday. By that time, a lot of the people's trash had blown around and was on the streets and not a very happy sight. I'm just simply saying, I really would like that trash collection business to be somehow monitored and perhaps even brought into compliance with what is expected of the normal collection routine. I don't know whether to expect a response or just make the comment and let it go at that.
Well, I think that, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other general public input?
Carl Pagaga, lived at 320 Star Crossing in Sunrise Estates. This thing's been bothering me for years, and I just wonder why we don't have something that has something about no Jake breaks coming into town on the highway. This morning, continuously, trucks are coming flying from the east. They hit the gas station, all of a sudden put their Jakes on, and everybody around it hears it. And a friend of ours used to live right down here, close to the town hall. She'd hear it coming from the west, where they'd come down the hill towards the park. Isn't there something we can do to have something that says, you know, no jake breaks allowed, you know, within the town limits. I don't know if it has to be actually a sound ordinance, but yeah, I know some places have to, you know, meter what the sound range is, but a lot of towns, like coming into Durango, they have, you know, no engine brakes. And I think this would be something that would really, you know, people, especially on Sunrise Estates, and the people who live next to 160 get blasted all the time. Thank goodness we're a block off of that, so we don't get it. But the people who live on 160, they must just hate it every morning. Just something I think you should put on some agenda coming up, that it would be really something the town could, you know, do that wouldn't cost much money except for 2 signs.
Carl, did you sign in the back? We have your email.
No.
Would you leave your email address on that sheet on the back, sign in? And I think we can follow up with you on that information.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Any other general public input? All right, hearing and seeing none. We'll move on to 1E, Planning Commission, disclose any conflicts of interest. Does the board have any conflicts? All right, seeing none. We'll move on to approve the agenda. I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
I hear a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you. We'll move on to number 2, public hearing agenda. It's going to be 2A 2022-15, 285 South Mesa Avenue, ADU variance. Ms. Nicole?
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a request from Antonia Clark, who is present for 285 South Mesa Avenue in Bayfield. This property currently has an ADU on the property. That ADU was previously approved when the actual residence was constructed for that property, and there's a copy of the agreement that was from 2017. After the builder built it, it did sell to a new property owner who, from my understanding of looking at the assessor's records, did not live in one of the units. And our ADU requirements for the town, which is our accessory dwelling unit requirements, when those were adopted, and the ordinance is also attached to this, ordinance number 369 is part of the packet. When those regulations were adopted back in 2012, they were actually adding a new additional density to single-family lots. So you have single-family home, as of 2012, you could add a second unit. There's a lot of restrictions on those units in terms of size of units. They have to be subordinate to the main structure. And one of the other restrictions is that the owner has to live in one of the units. And that's a pretty common standard across the board for accessory dwelling units, because, again, you're adding an additional use to a property, and you want, in a single-family neighborhood, and you want the property owner to help manage that unit versus having 2 rental units. And so that's pretty common language for an ADU. And so Ms. Clark did purchase the property. She came in just before her closing, and we did pull the paperwork and find out that it was a legal ADU there, but we also provided the owner occupancy requirement to her and told her options were to either remove the ADU if she was not going to be living in the unit, or to seek the variance.
Okay, excuse me, you said it was illegal?
It was
It's legal.
illegal,
Illegal,
yeah.
okay,
It's a legal unit.
okay.
um,
That makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does make a big difference. So the 2 options are, there's 3 options really: to the owner live on the property, or if the owner's not going to live on the property, to remove the unit or seek a variance, which the planning commission does make the decision on that variance. So if the planning commission were to deny the variance tonight and the applicant wanted to appeal, they would appeal planning commission's decision is a decision, it's not a recommendation to the board of trustees, so I'll make that clear. For both variances tonight. So just to orient you to the property, it's on Mesa, right here on Mesa Avenue. There are 3 criteria in the land use code, and what the land use code states is that you have to meet all 3 criteria in order to get a variance. And so it's pretty tricky to get a variance because it's hard to meet all 3 criteria. Usually the first one's the hardest, claiming a hardship that is not self-imposed. So that's, if you had some really unique property sizes or dimensions, you might have more of that claim, but that's the hardest claim to make of 3 criteria. And again, the code does require all 3 to be met in order for the variance to be granted. So unless staff kind of put in the staff report, unless there's some testimony that staff is not aware of that would show that they can meet all the criteria, staff does not believe that they do meet all 3 criteria. So the applicant is present. There were 2 letters of opposition that we received today, so I did email those out, but I also printed them in case you didn't get to see your email. Where this so for this specific item, there was 2 letters that I printed for you as well. And like I said, the applicant is present, and I know she would like to address the planning commission, but I can answer any questions that you may have of staff right now.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll let the applicant go ahead and speak first.
Thank you. My name's Antonia Clark. I live on County Road 220 outside of Durango, between Durango and Bayfield. Pardon me, I had my eyes dilated today, so it's really hard for me to see, but I think I'm going to get through this. One thing there are a number of things I want to clarify and a couple of things I want to address about the letters that are in opposition. But the primary thing is it kind of sounds like I've just wantonly disregarded your ADU requirements, which is not something I would ever do, and I think I've known your planning director for long enough that she knows that that's not something that I would typically do. My situation was that I owned a piece of property north of Durango. I live on County Road 220. It became kind of untenable for me to manage that property. I'd held onto that property for many decades, thinking that at some point, because I had a small business and no retirement fund, I could invest that property and in some good real estate and have some income, which is what I thought I was doing. So when I met with the realtors, neither the realtors or the title company disclosed to me that the property, one of the units had to be owner occupied. I stood with both my realtors talking to the people who lived upstairs, and I told them when I rent the unit downstairs, I'll make sure that they're good people, that if they have dogs, they're responsible. I want you to stay here. It was really clear to both my realtors many times during many discussions that I intended to buy the property and rent both units. And in fact, they both pushed me in that direction, saying, this is a really good investment. You can rent the house, you can rent the property upstairs, et cetera, et cetera. So I called to have my trash and my utilities transferred into my name, and Nicole was good enough to get on the phone and tell me about these requirements. I immediately called my realtor, and then I called my accountant because I had sold the property north of Durango. I had 65 days to designate another property where I could roll that money into it and purchase a piece of property and defer paying income taxes. My accountant said, this is going to cost you over $150,000 to walk away from this. You're going to have to pay the IRS $150,000. That would have been a hardship, and it was an untenable situation. So I thought, having only 3 days and a lot of things going on in my life, that was really, it was kind of not a possibility for me. I figured I could buy the property, I could talk about a variance, or I could move forward. So it was not a wanton disregard. It certainly would have been my choice to not buy the property under those circumstances. A couple of the realtors said, well, you know, you can have an IUD and you can change this and you can change that, and then the city won't know about it, and that's just not the way I operate. So anyway, I just want to be really clear about that. One of the letters from Alexis Hartz, who says that I had 2 realtors and myself, and my boyfriend and I own some property in Durango. Real estate savvy people should have known better. I'm not a real estate savvy person. In fact, the reason we're here tonight instead of last month is I had never sent a certified letter before and didn't understand the whole process on certified letters. This is not, you know, something that I dabble in. It's I was just trying to buy a piece of property that I could rent to some nice people and get a reasonable income and provide affordable housing, which, as you all know, is really difficult to come by. I really do feel like owning that property. I mean, we've all had neighbors that own the house next door, I'm thinking, that have not been good neighbors, and there's not a thing you can do about it. You know, they own the property. If they're hard to live with, that's kind of tough luck. And I emphasized in my application that I'm a responsible landlord. I make sure that my tenants are responsible if they have dogs. When I bought the property, it had been used as a vacation rental, I found out afterwards. So when I walked in the door and saw that it was a vacation rental, I just thought, well, that's interesting that they approved a vacation rental here, but I'm not interested in doing that. It never occurred to me that there was anything illegal about owning both of those units and renting both of them out. And a couple of the neighbors have told me that having a vacation rental with people coming and going and partying at different hours of the night was bad for the neighborhood. I think that I would be a much better owner. I don't think the lawn had been mowed in years. Certainly the weeds hadn't been taken care of. Ms. Hart says that we didn't do much of a job of taking care of the property. You know, Rome isn't built in a day. When you have a front yard that's filled with weeds, it takes a while to get rid of it. But if you drive by it tonight, which I did, the lawn is mowed. I have 2 school teachers that live there. One drives to Durango every day. One lives at Bayfield. He walks to his school to teach every day. They're responsible people. She also claimed that there were too many people there and actually accused me of subleasing the property. The 2 people that live there are school teachers. They have 2 military sons who are placed in Bahrain. One of them got married this summer. He flew home. His brother got leave, and their daughter came from school. And there were probably a lot of cars in the driveway. I'm sure they had a week-long leave, vacation, marriage ceremony. I think that all of us can relate to having a lot of people around your house when you have your children fly home from overseas to get married. So I just want to point out this is not a reasonable sort of thing, and I'm certainly not subleasing the property. And I didn't show complete disregard for the ordinance. Julie Blanchard wrote a letter and said that your term to provide long-term affordable housing to people who want to live in our community and not profit from it. I have two families that are living in that house, and they want to live there, and I'll read a letter from the people that are upstairs who are going to be forced to move. They want to live there. This is their community. They have a dog. They walk at the park. They walk with the neighbors. I noticed, and then it says that if you allow this variance, investors will be incentivized to purchase homes to rent for financial gains. Well, there's nothing stopping anybody from buying a house on that property and renting it to somebody. In fact, there's a number of for sale signs up and down that street. Granting me a variance or not granting me a variance is not going to affect that in any way. People can buy a house and they can rent it, I assume, right, in that neighborhood. So I'm just pointing out that a lot of these ideas are not really realistic or true. So the two school teachers that I have there, when I first showed them the house, and I mentioned in my application that I had tons of people who emailed me and wanted to move from Chicago, New Jersey, Denver to live here remotely. They were looking for someplace to live in Durango and Bayfield remotely. And I specifically waited until I got 2 people that I felt were part of the community and would benefit from a reasonable place to live. And my rents are pretty reasonable. I rent a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house for $2,400, and I pay half the utilities. I think that's, when they saw the house, they were overjoyed. When I mentioned things like, I'm sorry that window doesn't close, they kept saying, if you had any idea where we have been living in the last 4 years, you would not be apologizing for anything here. We are so delighted to find in a reasonable, affordable place close to town where our children can come and visit us. Please don't apologize. And they wrote me a letter that just basically said they're so happy to have a community for our 2 sons, both in the U.S. Navy, and daughter, a student at CMU in Grand Junction, to come home to. Then my tenants upstairs wrote and said, because I wanted to address the hardship issue. I'm not claiming extreme hardship if this variance isn't granted. I'm not going to be happy about losing that income after I invested this money in this house. I feel pretty blindsided. I know that's not your fault. But these people, I think, are going to really experience hardship. She says, my name is Jessica Sandoval. I live in Bayfield with my partner, Michael Dobson, our 5-month-old puppy. I'm writing you today to express the undue burden that being forced to move out of our home would cause. The most significant impact on our family would be financial. When rent prices are triple what they were a few years ago, it will put financial stress on Michael and me to come up with the money for a deposit. First and last month's rent and the expenses that come along with moving the furniture. I did not raise their rent, and I told them I would not raise their rent, even though it's at a lower level than most places. Additionally, it would strain our time and resources as full-time workers and caretakers of a growing puppy to be asked to find a new home. I work more than 40 hours a week for a nonprofit. Mike works 40 hours a week as a machinist in Durango Machining Innovations. It takes excessive time to look daily before and after work for rentals to meet our needs, correspond with landlords, travel to numerous locations for viewings. And I might add, it is so hard to find a place to live here. If you aren't on it like immediately, it's rented. If you aren't on it sold, it's sold. So it's not like these people can like wait several weeks and then go look at a bunch of different places that are available. Lastly, it would be distressing to be uprooted from our community. We have developed strong relationships with our neighbors and other community members, support and enjoy the local businesses in town, and attend the community celebrations. Michael and I would be disappointed to give up those things if we were asked to leave our home. Thank you for your time and consideration. So, I'm not claiming a hardship, but I do think that they would certainly suffer a hardship. Like I mentioned, I think having an owner that is responsible and follows the law and makes sure their tenants are good neighbors is certainly preferable to the last person who owned the house but didn't live there and has short-term rentals there. So there's, and I also noticed, there were, it appeared from the list of addresses that you sent me that there were at least 5 homes that are in the neighborhood now that are rental homes. And having people rent in the neighborhood is not a bad thing. I mean, people need a place to live. If they can't afford to buy a house in this market, that doesn't mean that they shouldn't be allowed to live in a nice place. So I would just like to say, I know that your requirements, one of them has to do with hardship. I'm not claiming hardship for myself, but I certainly feel like it would be a hardship for the tenants. I'm looking for there they are. I guess, I don't know, I think that my circumstance is pretty exceptional and extraordinary in that I, was committed to buying a piece of property to help me pay for my retirement and either had to decide to go forward and hope for some sort of a variance consideration from you guys or walk away from an enormous sum of money. To me, it's an enormous sum of money that I would have to send to the IRS instead. Is it necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right? I don't know, but I feel like I'm gonna be a better, I'm certainly, I'm a sure bet. I mean, people know me, you know, I have good tenants, I make sure they're good tenants. Somebody else moves in there, like the person who just owned it, breaks the laws. You know, I just feel like having me own that property is certainly gonna improve the property. And I did look into a xeriscape for the lawn, for the woman who complained about the lawn. And it would be a substantial investment, which I'm willing to take, because I know, I think the city of Bayfield sent out a letter at the beginning of the summer urging people to be prudent about water usage. And we all need to be prudent about water usage, but it's certainly not an investment I felt like I could do until I knew what I would end up doing with this property. And then I don't think it would be a detrimental impact on the public welfare or injury to the property or improvements in the vicinity. So my big concern is that you consider, you know, that you have two families living in a reasonable place that are good members of the society, and on a street that has a lot of people renting. I understand this is a different situation, and I don't blame you a bit for writing the ordinance the way you did, and I don't blame you a bit for not wanting to fill up your neighborhoods with rental properties, although that can certainly happen whether you provide this for me at all. So I'd like you to consider how you can, you know, how you might consider helping me with this. I'm open to ideas and suggestions. And I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm just, but I am asking you for your sympathy or empathy for the people there. The other issue is that the property, as it stands now, I mean, with the price that I paid for it, for me to have an upstairs ADU that is empty seems foolish in a rental market where people can't find a place to live, and especially an affordable place to live. But it would make no sense for me to continue to own that property if I couldn't have this variance, because it just wouldn't make any sense. And the people that live downstairs, then, if I ended up selling the property within a year, which is what the IRS requires, they would have to turn their lives upside down again, and I really hope that you help me figure out a way to make that not happen. Do you have any questions for me?
No, I just have one for Nicole. That the previous owner, you stated that it was a vacation rental.
Yeah, it was clearly a vacation rental.
Was that on our radar, or is that one of
That's
those?
the first I've heard that one.
Okay.
But I knew that the previous owner, just based on the county records, did not live there because their mailing address was in Durango. So I knew the previous owner was probably renting both units out either, but I had not heard of the vacation rental yet.
Can I ask you, what did you do about that? I mean, what do you do about that? If you know
There was a vacation rental?
No, that the owner was renting both
We
units
didn't know
out.
until you
Oh,
came in.
I see, okay,
It wasn't, that property was not on our radar till we got your phone call.
okay.
And they were selling it to you in 3 days, so there was not much we could do.
Yeah, no kidding, yeah. And I know it was a vacation rental just because I walked in the door, and you can tell a vacation rental, there's instructions on the refrigerator about what is, what the Wi-Fi is, blah, blah, blah. It was pretty clear, and I asked the realtor if that was the case, and she said she thought it was.
Other public comments? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barb Cummins. I live next door to said property. I have for over 30 years. And just to clarify, the front lawn looks great, but the back lawn is a mess, and so is the side lawn, full of weeds, about 12 foot high.
All right, yeah.
Okay?
Thank
So you might want to check the rest of the property before you say it's awesome.
Okay. It looks better.
Also, I'm not sure that it was a vacation rental. I know that they had found other work out of town for a period of time. I don't know how long that was, but it was not my understanding that it was a vacation rental. So I want to first say that I do understand that affordable housing is an issue, and I strongly support affordable housing for people. But across the street, that house is also for sale, and you're right. Anybody can sell their house and have anyone rent their house, okay? So I don't have a problem with the people personally. What I have a problem with is when we have an ordinance, there's usually a reason for it, okay? And I think that, you know, we as the public of the town of Bayfield have a right to, you know, state our opinion about those. I think the ordinance should stay in place. That's my personal opinion. Yes, there are houses for sale on our street. Some of them will end up being rentals, and I'm here to tell you, over the past 30 years, there's been some terrible rentals in that neighborhood. The house across the street had about 15 cars at one time. And amazingly, about a month before they had to be out of the house, they were there for about 5 years, about a month before they had to be out of the house, all the cars disappeared, okay? I mean, there were rats, there were mice, there were, you know, it was a mess. So I object to any house being a rental. It has nothing to do with the people that live there, okay? So as a 30-year resident of someone in that neighborhood, I object, and I don't agree necessarily with some of the things you're saying.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any questions?
Tom Long, Mesa Avenue. I'm just against variances in general. It's like, once you start this ball rolling, where do you stop? And does it continue on to the next person that owns the house? Or does it end with, or does it end here? I mean, is it in perpetuity? We have ordinances for a reason, and if you keep having people come in and get variances, it just steamrolls and everybody wants a variance.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? All right, hearing and seeing none. We'll move on to 2B, 2022-19, 1359 Kramer Drive fence variance. Ms. Nicole?
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought they made a decision around back then.
No.
No, that was just the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting.
All the hearings here, and then we do the decision. Okay. So this item is another variance. This is a fence variance located at 1359 Kramer Drive. The Leatherwoods are present, and they will have any questions as well as a person of planning commission. This is a corner lot in Sunrise Estates. It was just built recently, so new construction on the property. And they're asking for, kind of did a little drawing just so you understand it. Our code requires that 6-foot tall fences meet setback requirements. And so in this case, the blue area, they could do a 42-inch fence within that blue area. But if they want to do a 6-foot tall fence, they need to be outside that blue area behind their setback requirements. And each neighborhood has different setback requirements. So essentially, they can't, a 6-foot fence can't be in front of your front or side wall planes if you have a corner lot. And so in their case, they have essentially 2 fronts. They have a corner and a front, and the fence cannot be in front of the wall plane of the house for either the corner or the front. And so that's why they're in front of you today. They would like to, you can see the black line, that's where they would like to do a 6-foot fence. They already have a fence on the rest of their backyard, so it's just that portion that they're asking for the variance from. I did do a little research in the neighborhood, and the property across Kramer Drive as well as right next to them are in similar situations where their fronts face, they have a smaller front yard area they face. It's hard to explain, the wide side of the lot actually is their front, and the narrow side is their side. And these 2 lots actually do meet the fence standards for their 6-foot tall fence. So they did not have an issue meeting the fence standard. And so again, it's the same criteria for this, which is, like I said before, it's hard criteria because you have to claim that hardship. And so they have the same 3 criteria that they have to meet in order to get the variance. And that's kind of all I have on this one. Do you have any questions of staff? Otherwise, like I said, the applicant's equipment.
So they just need the 6-foot fence on that black line.
Yeah, they're just asking for that back black line for 6 feet. And it's that, their rear portion of their. But their house actually faces Kramer, so this is their front. If you can see my mouse, that's their front.
And why, they already have a fence around that meets our criteria.
The rest of it.
I mean,
It's
what's,
not that
I guess the applicant is here, we can find out why that section.
Would it be possible for them to put a 6-foot fence within the setback? I'm looking at that and I'm wondering whether it would hit the house.
Right now, they can put, according to the code, they can put a 6-foot fence
Right
right
there.
on
There.
this line.
Yeah.
They're asking to be along the property line. And so, in their case though, so a lot of lots, property lines are back of sidewalk. In this case, here's the back of sidewalk. So they do have some distance still between back of sidewalk and where they would want to put their fence on the property line. That's not always the case. A lot of times, again, the property line's back to sidewalk and then you would have a 6-foot fence right along the sidewalk. So theirs at least would still be set back if they were granted.
It's about 12 feet from the sidewalk to our property line. So the fence is not gonna be close to the sidewalk.
Well, sorry, will you just state your name and address for the record? Just
Sorry.
that's
My name's Shad Leatherwood, 1359 Kramer Drive. And the main thing that we're trying to accomplish here is to have as much space in the backyard, excuse me, as possible. So we just recently purchased the house. When we purchased it, our vision was to take the fence all the way to the sidewalk. We were not aware that there's a strip that doesn't even belong to us. Which is partially our own fault for not completely researching it all. However, when you look at a piece of property like that, you would assume that your property goes to the sidewalk. However, that's besides the point. We are trying to get as much space as possible for our backyard. We have children, we have dogs that are not staying with us right now, and we will gain 80 to 90 square feet in our backyard for our kids to play, for the dogs to run around, and we're just trying to utilize that space as much as possible.
To answer your question, and I'm Denise Leatherwood, you know, it's a new build, it's a new property, we're the first people to live there, and so the previous neighbors, they already had a fence going along. So we just want to close it off where that blue is and then connect it with our house. So it's not going to run, is it okay if I go up there? Like Nicole said, just where the black line is, so we're leaving this all open. We just want the variance there so that our 6-year-old and 2-year-old can play on the backyard. You know, we've sent out our certified letters that were required. We've had 4 or 5 neighbors come and give us their verbal support that they felt that it was a reasonable request. This area here doesn't impede any kind of traffic flow or sight lines with traffic there. We did provide a letter from one of our neighbors that put that in there. So, as my husband stated, you know, our first, you know, requirement of the imposed hardships, we did not realize where our, you know, the property line there, we didn't realize that there was an ordinance about not being able to build a 6-foot privacy fence. So, the second requirement of necessary, you know, we just feel like the way our property sets and just to be able to enjoy the backyard and have the kids enjoy the backyard, that's why we're putting in our application for the variance. And then, we do feel strongly that the variance can be granted without any detrimental impact to the public welfare, or injury to the property. Walking around Bayfield and, hearing Nicole say that, every neighborhood has their different, variance and requirements. We still feel that there's plenty of space, the 12 feet between where our fence will be and a sidewalk. We don't feel that there is any hindrance or any, safety concerns of people not feeling comfortable still utilizing that sidewalk. Any questions for us?
Are there easements in that location?
Well, from my understanding, I'm not super familiar with easements and how they work, but the approximate 12 feet is, I believe, what would be considered the easement, and that's not even our property. And then,
So our fence line would not be on that.
no,
Our fence line would be on our actual property line, leaving 12 feet between the fence line and the sidewalk. Does that answer your question? Are we?
So no, but you're not sure of any easements as far as you're concerned on the property in that area?
My understanding, we just had to do at least 10 feet.
yeah.
So, they don't have any easements that would require them to not, that would prohibit them from putting a fence in. There are some easements that prohibit fences, and there are others that allow them, and theirs does not prohibit a fence. So it's just regular utilities. Usually it's, gas,
Mm-hmm.
oil and gas that prohibits fences, and they don't have that.
Is there anything in their HOA that stipulates that? Because I know in some prior HOAs, they put the fence variances in there. Because I know Mesa Meadows does.
I think the president's here.
Yeah, our president's here.
I'm not sure if they have the fence variance in the HOA in this case.
I can
did-
answer that.
Yeah, the original subdivision agreement and CCNRs, I didn't see anything, but it doesn't mean that they haven't made some changes. We are not a party to the HOA, codes, covenants, restrictions.
So since the president is here, is there anything that stipulates that?
Come up here so I can be heard. The HOA covenants state that the fence requirements have to conform to the Bayfield's regulations. So when their permit came in for a fence, we deferred to the Bayfield regulations, and so it's whether or not they will be acceptable to Bayfield's regulations, and then HOA essentially says that if it meets Bayfield's requirements, then the HOA, other than things like the type of fence, which I think is also Bayfield's requirement, it's to be wooden slats and so on, not a wrought iron fence or something. Is that?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Did you say that the neighbors to the west already have a fence line on that same row that you're wanting to build your fence? That you're
Yes,
meeting up
there's an
against?
existing fence, and you can actually see it there. There's an existing fence that comes out to this point. And I've already talked to them, and
No,
they,
it goes past that fence. Oh, no, you're right.
no, I'm pretty sure that's their existing fence. And we're gonna extend, hopefully, they just don't have your standard, picket fence that has a top cap and stuff. But I've already talked to them, and they said that they would be that they are okay with extending that same type of fence. And there's a tree over here, and the utilities are over here, so it's actually gonna jog over and then out to preserve this tree in the yard, as well as to allow access to those utility boxes.
So the neighbor's existing fence does meet the town of Bayfield standards, they're setback.
And you said the neighbor across the street has the same similar layout Do they have a fence
They
currently?
do.
I think you said that, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, so their fence is also, there's
Okay.
back here.
So
is
it's
going to be
setback.
as well.
And our only continue to do that is, both of those people are great people, they just don't have small children. That's why we're after the variance.
Well, and we are in a unique situation being on the corner because on all the other standard shaped lots, they have more space in their backyard. You know, and we're trying to utilize and make our backyard as big as possible. I mean, to a certain extent, with the strip of property that's not even ours, it's kind of an unusable space to a certain extent. Once, you know, with a fence up, there's a strip of unusable kind of space out here that, I don't know. We're just trying to get as much space in our backyard as possible. And yes, we could bring a 42-inch fence out to our property line, but, I mean, then it's not necessarily a privacy fence. It's not gonna keep, you know, medium to large-sized dogs in. And, you know, it's only a matter of time before the kids are climbing it. Well, they'll climb the 6-foot fence. But that's just where we're at with it.
Any other questions for us?
Is the rest of your lot fenced, and how tall is the fence?
6 foot.
It is 6 foot.
It's 6 foot, all the neighbors that, you know, we're leaning up against them, they have 6 foot, fence.
Yep, it's 6-foot privacy. You can kind of see it here, which I did get the okay. I did tie into this and fence this little section in. But there again, by bringing the fence out to the corner of the house, which we could legally do, you get this little strip of awkward space. But there is a 6-foot privacy going along here, and there's a different style, 6-foot wood privacy going right here. So we're just looking to extend it and close in the backyard.
And we would stay with 6 foot wood privacy. There wouldn't be anything else. Any other questions? Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So we'll still continue the public hearing, but we'll move on to 2C, 2022.
There was public.
Oh.
Public.
Sorry, go for it, sir.
I'd like to comment on this.
Oh, name and address, please.
I'm sorry, Carl Pagaga, 320 Star Crossing. I live in this lot right here, but all the other fences here comply with the city regulations. Putting the 6-foot stockade fence essentially makes it look odd compared to the rest of the neighborhood. Everybody else has complied with having a 6-foot fence behind the house, you know, back from the setback. And that one is not going to look at all correct. I mean, if they had the 42, I don't have a problem with that. And that's staying with city regulations. Putting a 6-foot fence up there, even though it's gonna keep their dogs in or something, is not gonna look good in the neighborhood. And everybody else has built their fences the way the city wanted them. And I don't see that this fence should be any different. It's just, we've all complied with what they wanted for fences, and that one is not going to comply, and it's gonna look odd sticking out from the house 6 feet high. Being a privacy fence all the way out, and it is actually gonna look, from here, it doesn't look like much of an area, but it is more, when you see it driving down the street, it sticks out a ways. I just want the rest of the neighborhood to look decent. I don't want an odd thing that pokes out and makes the rest of the neighborhood look a little funny. It's just my opinion, but I know the neighbors around me think the same way I do. So, and I know Phil had talked, Phil is the house that's just to the left there. He said they could tie into his fence, no problem there. But I don't think he, is Phil here? Oh, he said he was coming. I don't think he has any really intention of it being the 6-foot level. I'd have to talk to him again. I just talked to him yesterday. But to me, he insinuated that he didn't want a 6-foot fence going out that far. So I guess I can't talk to him, but when I talked to him yesterday, he was given the impression that he wasn't thrilled with the idea of a 6-foot fence. So I guess that's my opinion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other public comment on this one? All right, seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to 2C, 2022-17 Pine River Commons Comprehensive Plan Amendment.
So, I guess this is a question for the planning commission, the applicant. The applicant is not.
Mr. Jack. Thank you, sir. You can ask her the question afterwards.
I would ask the planning commission how you want to proceed. I just emailed the applicant, but I haven't just heard back, so I don't know if there's planning to attend, something came up. Do you want to hear the item still, or do you want to continue it until the applicant can be present?
Personally, I'd like to continue it and wait for the applicant.
Yeah, I hate not having them here to answer questions or.
I feel like I can vote on the situation without them here, but it's going to not be in the benefit of the applicant. But if they're not here to advocate for themselves, then I feel that it's an undue justice for the public that established this meeting, and if their lack of attendance is detrimental to them, that falls on the applicant, not the public and the planning commission.
Can we listen to the presentation but remove the action agenda item?
Yeah, I sent him the last week, but I'm seeing if I might have a phone number, he can join on Zoom possibly, if you want to give me a quick 3-minute break. Otherwise, I mean, I'm up for whatever you guys like to do.
I mean, I think it's a pretty straightforward presentation. I just, if there's questions, I hate not having.
No, I agree with you. I guess my issue is this is a massive change, modification to the city and the community of Bayfield, and the lack of attendance by the applicant is concerning to me.
I mean, I understand that, if it's an emergency situation or something like that came up.
Want me to call him and see if he can join Zoom?
Yeah, at least give it a try.
Sure.
Quick break.
Who brought that? Let's see.
Seeing as you're doing a quick break, just kind of FYI that your October meeting is your annual meeting. And that is when you'll basically take a look at your bylaws and any updates. And there are 3 commissioners where your term ends. So Brian Gadd, Tish Nelson, and Matt Nyberg, your term ends October of 2022. So you may think about rerunning or asking for your reappointment. We'll also advertise as well for that annual meeting as well. So, and the others, Chris, Cash, and Jason, I have you until 2024.
You need a decision on that tonight?
If you're not
Soon.
here, you get appointed.
Soon-ish. I was trying to text Katie over Teddy's here. dabble.
He like looked at me.
Do what?
Teddy Jack.
Teddy Jack.
Let me think.
I was waiting for the marshal and then I was
Yeah,
like,
we don't
"Oh."
have them today. You got the button up.
You're done. Your history. You don't get to choose. You are good to go. And I say you're good to go, I
Decisions
mean,
like
you
that.
don't get to choose.
What do you mean?
Always.
Permanent appointment.
Vote until I'm told.
Are you referring to October?
Tish, we'll just keep rolling you in here whether you like it or not.
What?
We'll just keep rolling you in here whether you like it or not.
Yeah, I missed one meeting, I just became, like, you missed a meeting and you became vice, so I was like, put that in there.
It's dirty like that.
You make sure you come to all the meetings. Oh, good.
Looks like we'll be able to move forward.
I spent all day today thinking it was Monday. I told my wife, Rodney, we have a meeting tonight. No, it's Monday.
Can you need to click on that Zoom.
I think somebody's.
There's a
Yeah,
Zoom.
I was out.
Put you on the video.
I didn't think I went to work yesterday, so I was like, oh yeah, it's Monday, I got another
Did I
day.
do that? Or would you rather just stay on?
I don't know if it's any of our. Do what? I don't know. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
gotcha. You're too close to your microphone.
And then this one option, while he's turning around, is to make decisions on the other two and then come back to this one, so. if you want-
Or, I mean, as long as, like, you can, if there's questions and you can be the go-between or.
Yeah, I sent you the link.
So just move on with the
And-
public hearing.
That's what I might do.
I'm saying maybe go move on to the decisions for the other two and then come back, like move to the action agenda for minutes and the other two, and then we can come back to this one last. So we don't do that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So seeing that, we'll move on to the action agenda. 3A, approval of August 9th, 2022 minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from August 9th, 2022.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Gad,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes?
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am. So moving on to 3B, action agenda 2022-15, 285 Mesa Avenue, ADU variance. Does the board have any discussion?
I mean, I have a question for Nicole on this one. I mean, the whole situation, look, it's tugging at my heartstrings. I get it. I know how impossible it is to find rentals here. I don't like the fact that we will have families displaced if we don't grant this variance. But I feel like there was some negligence on the Realtor there, and I'm just wondering if there is any legal action against the Realtor, or if that's just kind of a risk that you assess in these contracts.
So I'll kind of give my spill on the Realtor versus coming down and doing your own homework. You know, that, if there's any negligence against the Realtor, that's between the property owner and their Realtor. I mean, I would hope most people, when they're looking at property, would do their research and come talk to the town, because the Realtors don't always know the correct information. information, and so that's my disclaimer. I tell people to always come talk to the city, because the realtors don't always know. So I would say the city would not have any negligence against the realtor, but that's something between the property owners.
Nothing has to do with that. There was, there is some question, there also was nothing in the title company, I'm pursuing, looking into that more, because the title company actually should have done their due diligence. That's why you pay a title company to, you know, do all that research and provide you with those sorts of documents. So, I frankly feel that the listing realtor intentionally hid that from me. I don't know. But I think the title company could have done a better job too.
Yeah, title should have caught it, because it was recorded with the property. So that's how I found it. It's recorded.
Yeah, I mean, it bothers me as well that this was just another property that slipped through the cracks as far as town's concerned. And it's like, I know going forward that this is what we're trying to avoid. And it just, you know, people got away with it for so long, and it was just kind of okay. But
Nicole, what was it that you were referring to that was recorded, that you just referred to?
The ADU agreement
Oh,
that spells out the owner occupancy.
okay.
It's on the assessor site. You can access it as a public document.
It was recorded with the ordinance attached to it. And so that's how I found it originally. When someone calls me for property, that's the first place I'll look. Our records are a little bit harder to find things, so I go there first, and that's where I found it right away. So it should have been on title, and I can't explain why the title company missed it, but it should have been.
And I also agree, I'm not a fan of ordinances, and it's, you know, for those of us that have been on the board for a while, it's getting a little tiresome having to go and clean up some of the things that should not have even been allowed.
You mean variances?
Or, sorry, variances, yeah.
I'm not
ordinances.
Those pesky
The mayor
laws
just
get in
said
the way
that
of
she's
a lot
not
of
in favor
things.
of ordinances.
Sorry, variances. I know, you know, we've seen several come our way that, you know, should have just, it shouldn't have put us in that position.
No, and I'm not a big fan of variances. There's been variances in Mason Meadows, variances on the Buck Highway with certain churches, and I just feel like sometimes it's asking for forgiveness after the fact. And I believe that, you know, these ordinances are put into place for a reason, and, you know, we just need to stand behind them.
I'm feeling the same way that Mayor Tarkington is feeling, that this is, it really tugs at my heart. But I don't think that this situation meets the requirement for the three requirements for a variance. And it's unfortunate.
I mean, if you're ready for a motion, I would make a motion to deny the 285 South Mesa Avenue ADU variance.
I'll
with-
second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes, I support the denial of the variance.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am.
And I just want to throw it out there, there is a lot of work being done with the county with rental assistance. There's a lot of programs going on right now. I can get that information out, so, okay.
And can I ask when do I have to tell these people they have to do that? Right now?
That's up to you.
So they can have a couple months to find a place to live?
I mean, what is the,
Set a timeline. deny the variance, she's not in compliance with the code, so then we would be working on, having them move along. Normally, we write a letter saying, make a decision in 10 days. In this case, if you want to give them
90 days or,
I'm in full support of a reasonable amount of time for the individual to find,
absolutely,
and especially because it's not the doing of the residents.
right.
or 90 days,
I would second that support. I would second a 90-day
90 days.
window to allow them to find a housing and appropriate for that. Because I do feel like the residents are put in a hard place on this one. On top of the homeowner trying to address this issue, but the goal is not to put them out in the streets in regards to this variance. I think the variances should not be the norm, but the exception.
90 days, and I'll email you the rental assistance information like that. They're surprised,
Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to action agenda 3C, 2022-19, 1359 Kramer Drive fence variance.
It's 2B, but
Oh, sorry.
I already flubbed up tonight. Anyway, it's okay.
Okay. The Kramer Drive variance.
There we go.
Does the board have any questions?
No, so I guess I'll just start. They're not losing the ability to have a larger backyard. They just have to have a shorter fence, is the bottom line here. To be compliant with our. And I think listening to some of the neighbors and the concerns and once again, just my opposition to granting variances, I think we just need to stick to the course.
And on top of it, we just adjusted the fence ordinance to ensure compliance across the rest of the town. And I think to turn around in such a short period of time and grant a variance to the ordinance we just adjusted would be hypocritical.
Just to point out though, for the record, this residential like this was not adjusted, we didn't change that.
No, I know, but we looked at the fence ordinance as a whole just recently, and that's just,
We've been discussing the fence ordinance.
and the city council put their, stamp of approval on that, and I feel that is our obligation to, if it doesn't meet those three requirements, then it doesn't meet the requirements for a variance.
I agree.
Yeah, I'd say I appreciate the Leatherwoods coming in tonight and asking for the variance and trying to do it right. I think there's a number of properties around town that didn't ask for a variance. They just put up a fence that's not in compliance, which I'm hopeful that that's all being addressed and we can take care of that as time passes here. But I just don't see us approving the variance on this one. I don't see it meeting the requirements and the three standards that we gotta take into account.
Well, hearing, I would entertain a motion.
I'm going to lift a motion to deny the variance for 2022-19, 1359 Kramer Drive fence variance.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
all in favor.
Thank you, ma'am.
Back to a public hearing.
Real quick, Charlie, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. Okay, all right. So we'll start your item. I'll do the presentation first, and then we'll open it up to you if you want to add anything.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So couple months back, or really in 2021, were commercial. And that, that developer did walk away from the project, and Charlie has since purchased the property. And Charlie wants to do a mixed-use development, with commercial and residential. And so right now, in the comp plan, it is designated as commercial. And so we would need to amend the comp plan, to mixed use in order to allow commercial and residential uses, to be combined on this property. This property does have, a long stage, I would say. We've dealt with a few of these recently. We're really at the comprehensive plan amendment, so we haven't even started the annexation process yet. So planning commission tonight, board of trustees next week, and then we start with the annexation petition. We'll be in front of the board of trustees on October 4th. If they accept that, we start the process with planning commission and board of trustees. And then after they annex, then they still have the sketch plan, the preliminary plan, and the final plan. And again, sketch plan is very conceptual. Preliminary plan is where we get more of the engineering, traffic study, all of that information, any environmental studies, and then final plan. If everything is consistent with preliminary, then staff can do the final plan approval now under the new code amendments. And so really, we're at the very beginning stages again for this property, and we're just looking at our future land use map. Do we want to see mixed use there versus just pure commercial? And then he will start the process for annexation after that. It does meet our code. You know, commercial use is important to the community, so is residential right now. So trying to balance that. We do have quite a few commercial properties still available in our business park. And then we have some commercial that hopefully will come up with this, as well as the Bayfield East in the future. So we'll still be getting some commercial uses in the future for the community. So staff is recommending approval because the proposal right now is for townhomes, which is the unit type that we did see in our community. It's a good mix with commercial, but it's a little higher density residential than just single family. So staff is recommending approval of this comp plan amendment. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that planning has. And then I know Charlie is available if you have any questions with him as well. Real quickly, just this portion along the highway will be the commercial piece, and then the portion along Bayfield Parkway will be the residential.
So my first question is, in the letter to the city / planning commission and everything, it spoke of the Haga property being historical. I did some personal research and found no such registration of that property of being historical. So I was wondering where that terminology came from, because there was a goal of the developer to separate that and then sell that off. So I just was wondering why that was the case and why that historical tag had been applied to it when there's, as far as I was able to find, no historical designation on that property.
Let me start with that, because I was brought twice tonight about historical. So Bayfield does not have a historic preservation board, so it's really hard to designate historical structures in our community right now. You can still do it, you go through the state, but it's not, we don't have somebody championing that process right now for the community. And so the Department of Interior does designate anything over 50 years technically as historical. This does not have a historical landmark on it, so it doesn't have any regulations. So they could demolish it if they wanted to. It's also doesn't have any tax credit history because it doesn't have a landmark. But that, I would say that's one piece, but also if it's older than 50 years, technically the federal government now says it's historical.
Sorry, Nicole, there's somebody in the waiting room too.
Thank you. And so I just want to kind of clarify that. I'll let Charlie kind of elaborate on what he's proposing to do with that piece of the residence, but just because it came up twice tonight, I just wanted to kind of designate. Maybe someday we'll have a board that can actually help us designate historical structures. I know the county does have a historical board that could help, and I think Bayfield really hasn't taken that opportunity yet to designate.
But this is currently in the county, am I correct?
It is.
First, I want to apologize for not being there this evening. I got mixed up on my dates, so Nicole, I appreciate your, get me on the video here at least. But no, anyway, on the Haga house, Haga's told me that that's a little over 100 years old. And that and the corrals and barns and so forth, I didn't plan on disturbing those or making them part of the subdivision. I just planned on selling now off something, and if somebody could come up with some historical designations on it, I think that would be real great.
The brand inspector lived there when I was a kid. That's all I've got for you.
Yeah, I mean, it is a process to designate it a landmark, but that's something we can look into for Charlie if that's what he wants to look into. Property owners have that right to ask to designate their properties.
Yeah, it's something that I would certainly be open to if anybody's interested. I'm kind of a history buff myself, so I would be glad to cooperate on that. Overall, I think Nicole covered the project really well, and on the south side, the goal is to do affordable housing if that's possible to do. I'm not looking for I guess a large profit out of it. Just like to get some housing for the people in Bayfield at work.
I guess when I was talking about the Haga residents, are you opposed to actually incorporating and developing in that? Because it's 0.8 acres, and based off your letter, it means that you could potentially add up, additional townhomes to that to increase the overall residence capacity of that development, rather than just having one residence there. And if you're going to develop the rest of it for quite a few townhomes, is that like a huge part of your plan, or to sell off that portion, or is it something that's contingent or fluid?
Yeah, I have a hearing problem. That didn't come through real well. Nicole,
I can repeat it, yeah.
If you could repeat that, please. I can hear you good.
Okay, yeah, because I had the mic closer. So Commissioner Evans is asking, are you really set on subdividing that piece off and creating historic structure there, or would you even consider developing it as part of the rest of the project, getting rid of the house and doing additional townhomes? So I think this question is it a done deal, or are you going to consider maybe still using that piece for additional townhomes?
No, I was not considering on using that, the piece where the Haga house is and the Haga barns and so forth. I was not considering on using that for townhouses. What I was saying is if anybody is open to doing anything on historic on that, I'd be glad to cooperate on it.
And what's your definition of affordable housing? That's kind of a generic term. I'd like to understand when you describe this affordable housing, what are you looking at putting in as affordable housing?
So he's asking, Charlie, what's your definition of affordable housing? What are you thinking when you say affordable housing?
Well, we're shooting for townhouse units that would sell for around 300,000. Our estimates come out that we can do that, but our hope is that we could get some state grants on the infrastructure. If we can get some infrastructure grants, I believe we can do 300,000. This would be for about a 1,000-foot townhouse unit. Without the grants for infrastructure, it would be a little tough. We'd just have to wait and see how our costs come out on it.
And I'll just add, right now, if you do get grants for affordable housing, you usually either have to subsidize or deed restrict, so there are gonna be requirements that we put on those units to meet certain affordable levels if he gets funding, on that. But there's a lot of money
Yes.
right now for affordable.
Yeah, so deed restrictions would be acceptable to be on that.
Any other questions for Charlie?
No, thanks for joining us, though.
Thank you very
No
much.
questions right now, Charlie. So, sit
Okay.
tight.
Thank you, sir.
He opens the public hearing.
Okay.
With that, I'll open the public hearing.
I was just curious, how is the,
Name and address, please.
Sorry.
Carl Pagaga, 320 Star Crossing. I'm curious to see, I know Department of Roads would really like to make this 4 lanes all the way to the edge of town here eventually. How is this gonna affect access to that area? You know, they're gonna take off probably another 50 feet on each side of the road by the time they get done.
So Charlie, he's asking how CDOT's future plans to make this 4-lane will impact this. And CDOT does have a plan out there, I don't have it in front of me right now, that we'll just make sure as we go through this process that this complies with, so that,
It might make access hard to get from the highway, they may have to walk
so, well, they're not,
Parkway.
right now CDOT's saying they can't have access off the highway.
Okay, that's gonna make it all Parkway.
So they already know that.
Ooh, that's gonna screw up things.
Yeah, well, my best guess is that there would be no chance of us developing the commercial until there's an arrangement made with CDOT and a light put in on 160 and Bayfield Parkway. What we plan for our phase 1 of our project, it would be in the southwest corner of the property. That would be over near the existing data house. And that would, the entrance for that would be off of Bayfield Parkway. And so I don't expect that CDOT would get involved in that, but I'm certain that they would on the commercial part.
Yeah, so just let me add to that since that question came up. The town's actually, the board of trustees has directed town staff to take the lead on working with CDOT to get a signal at Bayfield Parkway and 160. So that's on our radar to do, and probably be going after some grant funding to help pay for that as well. And then all their commercial will have to come off of Bayfield Parkway. Yeah, so there'll be probably deceleration lanes and things like that that are gonna be part of it. So that design's still happening. Right now, we're at 30% design, and we're gonna be working with SEH to get to our 60% design of that signal. But this is gonna have to come off of that, and that's, if you saw the plan, I mean, I'm bringing that up again. But right now, CDOT's saying they will not allow an access off of the highway.
Makes sense.
Any other?
So,
No, I'm just pointing out, gentleman's here.
Paul Black, 311 County Road 501. Hopefully someday live at the Caribbean. We'll see how that goes. Anyways, I'm here representing the Schroeder Ditch. This piece of property has been a massive challenge for any developer. You can see that the current ditch where it lays just eats up a tremendous amount of real estate. And just with this kind of new plan design here, it kind of shows that our ditch is gonna be kind of piped directly underneath what would soon become a town street. So there's a lot of things to consider about that. You know, we've kind of gone down this road before with the ditches and culverts and things like that. You know, what we're gonna request in an agreement would be really, really huge. I mean, it's, the reality to that, with that pipe completely underneath that road is, I mean, the town's gonna be responsible for that. I mean, if that fails, water's not flowing, huge things that would all come with that in agreements. Not saying it can't be done. This is kind of a new idea that we'll have to look at. There's also a ditch that's not on this that goes directly parallel with the parkway towards the Haga property. That's the lateral B. Most of the time we do request a 60-foot easement, and most of the time no other utilities are within that. So you'll have sewer, electrical, all sorts of stuff in there. So the way this design is right here, it looks like a massive challenge on how to come up with and make that work, and then also having the town comfortable with that as well. So that's kind of.
Isn't that what happened with Mountain View?
Yes.
Was it last year?
Yeah, so the culvert failed. We have the right to run our water, so we dug the road up and ran water until we could get that fixed when we shut water off. So that's just something to think about, that it could be piped and fine for 50 years, no problem. You know, like I said, it's just when we're gonna present an agreement for this, it will be a pretty substantial piece for the town of Bayfield to recognize that, because I'm assuming that will be your guys' street right away with it directly underneath it.
And I know there's gonna be a ton of questions about traffic, there's gonna be a ton of questions about this ditch. It's not what we're being asked, I mean,
Correct.
to
Yeah.
consider tonight, so.
Correct.
That's just what our comment was, so.
Yeah, no, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
We will, at some point before we move the project along, make sure they do have that agreement in place with Schroeder Ditch. So that'll be a requirement as part of their approvals.
Yeah, I've had several conversations with the Schroeder Ditch people on this, because I realize that's a big issue.
Yeah. We've talked quite a bit.
But just, sorry, just because you're here, Paul, I mean, you haven't seen anything like this before, or?
We've done, so we've had crossings, but as far as, because most of the time your guys' highway road right-of-ways carries all.
Yeah, sorry.
Can't run away.
Yeah, I'm not a good public speaker. So we've done crossings before, and that's usually pretty easy to do. But when you have a road that's gonna be pretty much directly over top of it, that's where you guys carry most of your utilities and everything. And then also that, I don't know what the kind of CDOT code's gonna be for the type of piping to be underneath that road to carry that. And then also, like, your sewer's gotta be on grade, so does this ditch gotta be on grade. So there might have to be lift stations that come up with that. There's just a lot of things that will have to be going through that agreement. We've never had a big ditch. That's a 5-foot culvert that'll be underneath that, that roadway. So we haven't dealt with anything like this in that long of a piece on a road, I guess you'd say. So, any other questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a lot, but it's not the time or the place.
I know. So we're all going, okay.
So then we're gonna move on to, back to the action agenda D, 2022-15, Pine River Commons, Haga Comp Plan Amendment.
So, just so I can get, what are we actually voting on then if we're not voting on any, like, actual actionable items? Is it just we're going to entertain this?
Amending to allow for residential.
Because it was all
Yeah.
commercial.
No.
Right now, it's just commercial.
The Board of Trustees makes the ultimate decision on this. You're making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees on whether the future land use map should change
So we're changing the land use map is all we're voting on. Sorry. Okay.
Correct.
No,
Because I was
know, it gets
confused
a
with
little-
annexation and all this other stuff and yeah, and it was, okay, all
We're
right.
just the beginning stages.
So I'd entertain a motion.
Can I ask real quick, we're going to mixed use, not multifamily on any portion of this?
Yeah,
So
so
it's
it's
all
gonna be a
mixed
mixed use, which would allow for the commercial and the residential.
Is,
Which limits it to 10 units per acre in
Total,
the mixed
yeah.
use.
So he can use it here in this area.
I would make a motion to recommend to the Board of Trustees approval of the Pine River Commons Comprehensive Plan Amendment with the following findings and conditions as stated in the packet.
I second the motion.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Evans,
no.
Vice Chairperson Gadd,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson? Yes. Commissioner O'Shea Heidinger,
Yes.
Mayor Tarkington,
Yes.
Commissioner Snooks,
Yes.
Chairperson Nyberg,
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 against.
Okay, Charlie, this will be on the Board of Trustees meeting next Tuesday, 6:30.
Okay, okay, good. All right, I'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question on that. Will it just be kind of the same thing, just in front of the trustees, so do I need to submit the same type of comments?
If you want,
Okay, probably good.
you could write them or come.
All right, moving on to number 4, discussion and adjourn. 4A, update on August 30th comp plan work group meeting and planning commission liaison.
So we had our first working group meeting last month, and it went really well. We had 8 members in person of the 14, and then we had 3 that were via Zoom. So we were missing 3 of our 14, but we also had staff there. We do have a Board of Trustees liaison. Alexis Hartz is our liaison, and we're looking at a planning commission liaison so that they can kind of help report back on these meetings. And I know Tish has shown some interest.
I was there.
She's been to the meeting. So I wanted to bring that up and see what the planning commissioners thought about Tish being a liaison to this working group as we go through. It's about a 9-month process. We're going to be tackling, looking at our comp plan.
I'll absolutely volunteer Tish for that.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Go Tish.
Can we vote now?
I think it's gonna be 7-0, but I'll just 6-0.
And then I'll continue to bring, the initial meeting was more introductions and just hearing what expectations were and kind of talking about process. So as we get into the meat of it, I will be bringing updates to the planning commission regularly, so we all know how it's moving along. And we'll probably have a series of public meetings that'll be coming up that will definitely be keeping you in the loop on. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on that. Tish is our new liaison.
Way to go.
And so probably the question for the planning commission is about your annual meeting. How do you want, if you're going to have Tish as the liaison to the comp plan, would you like a letter of interest to continue a next term? This would be another 4 years, 2022 to 2026. We will advertise for that there are 3 seats on the planning commission that will be up for a new term. And of course, the public will have, that lives in Bayfield would have the same opportunity to come to the planning commission. So I don't know what you would like as a planning commission.
I mean, not to
For that
put you all on the
consideration.
spot, but I mean, what are your feelings on?
I mean,
your
at this
terms?
point, oh, sorry, I'm just saying, I think if Tish has shown interest, even if her term is up, if things change, we can adapt and overcome. But I appreciate Tish's interest and her active participation. So, and yeah. And I'd love to see all of you guys here for future meetings.
So you also have nominations for your chairperson and vice chairperson, and some other things that are done at that annual meeting, so.
When is that annual meeting?
It's October's planning commission meeting, October 11th.
That's the next meeting.
Fun meeting.
Put that big star on my calendar.
We know what happens.
Okay. You don't show up, we nominate you for things.
All right, we'll move on to
And we're
update
gonna
on
put your letter in.
Mustang Crossing plot phasing.
Yeah, so Mustang Crossing's been working with the town staff. They, if you recall, they got their preliminary plan approval for everything from the Planning Commission, so the whole project. And then they were gonna look at 2 phases. They went to the Board of Trustees, because at that time, final plan still went to the board. And the board approved phase 1's plat. Well, now, they're saying based on just kind of what the economy's doing, they want to break it up into more phases than just 2. And so they're going to be going back to the Board of Trustees to amend their final plat to break it up into additional phases. So that does not need to come to Planning Commission, because Planning Commission didn't approve the final plat. They're not changing the overall project. They just want to build it in smaller phases. So I just wanted to give you the heads up that they're going to be asking the board to rephase their plat. And what we're asking them to do is plat each phase. So if they wanted to build 20 units, then they need to plat that separately and not phase of one plat. They need to plat each phase if they want to. So they'll be going to the Board of Trustees for that, but I wanted the Planning Commission to know. But again, no plans changing for the preliminary plan. What you saw here is what they're still proposing to do. It's just going to be broken up.
Do we know how many phases they're hoping to do?
I think they're right now looking at 5, but we're still working at, making sure it makes sense. What we don't want to see is like everything come off Louisiana. We want them to have Mustang and Louisiana access for construction, even for first phase. So we're trying to look at some of those details and what the phases make sense, as well as how they make sense with our utilities and utility connections. So we're still working with them, but I think right now they're looking at 5.
Is that ready for next week, or we're just, okay.
Yeah, it may be on October. I just wanted to get a plan on that one.
Thank you, ma'am. Your next town board meeting is September 20th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Your next comp plan workshop group meeting is September 27th, 2022 at 6 p.m. The next planning commission meeting is October 11th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m.
I have one thing for you, Jen. I just wanted to recognize J.D. Burke. He's with Upper Pine Fire, and we've gotten to work very closely with him since I started in the last 7 months. We've created a fire and building meeting once a month where we can talk about the different things that are going on with our projects. And Upper Pine has decided not to fund that position anymore. And so we're pretty sad that this will be JD's last planning commission. He's done at the end of the month. And then we'll be working with Upper Pine on how they're gonna be reviewing, building permits and business licenses and land use applications moving forward. But I just wanted to recognize JD and tell him thank you, because it's been good to get to know him and work with him for the last 7 months. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You want us just to leave
Leave
these
them
up
at-
here?
Yeah, I'll leave those.
Funny.
I mean, I feel terrible for
What's that?
if I just folded it.
The fence
Every
one I
time
could
you
have gone
talk, you
either
scare
way.
me.
The other one.
Because it
I
just be
was-
so loud right when you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, right.
I
Totally.
don't. That's why I was curious, because I know the
I
hedges
don't,
really well.
like, I wanna do it.
But I just didn't know who had bought it.
Cannot find something within 90 days, like, I mean, we should be able to extend that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're open to that,
Yeah.
you know.
And that was just like a rough estimate I threw out there, but that's, I think that's great. 'Cause it was,
We could have
what
said
needed to
like
happen.
30
Yeah.
days.
We could. I mean, you gotta just set the tone from here on out. No more of these bro deals.
Be like, where's Teddy Jack? Gotta go.
He's waiting for you in the parking lot.
He's gonna maul me in the parking lot.
Yeah, watch out for Teddy Jack.
Yeah, Tim, Brian, and Matt are all, their terms are up.
Yeah, Matt's up for it
I mean,
too.
they can,
He called me the chunky guy a few months ago.
That's right.
and we'll advertise.
My favorite was like in the, like right when we got back.
No, we'll
from
advertise,
in person.
put something in the Herald.
Like coffee. We have Lori like who works with him. He's like, I
And then,
It's just like coughing all over the room. We're like, ah. And he had nothing to say.
oh, I didn't know he was done at the end of the.
Just wanted to share his love for
Yeah, just wanted to